We're still working on our Brighton sister story. And yesterday we did chapter 1 3 different ways. Today is what I thought we would do is go through and do where's the kitbashing? And bashing notion. Melissa did this wonderful template for us that lets you've got a column for most accurate, a column for best prose. This column used to say fastest, but yesterday I changed it to balance because that's what Sudowrite has changed to now. And then there's a column for your merged prose, so you can pick the best of each column and put them together. And what I will do, I'll come back here to the kitbash template. And I will, if I copy the link, I think this will work because it should. I've shared it before, so we'll see if this works. You should be able. Oh, Cynthia did. Sorry, Cynthia, I sent that to you. Let's see. Okay, send this to everyone. And you should be able to click on it and then click duplicate. If you see where I have duplicate up here in the settings, then you can duplicate it to your own Notion. You do not need a paid Notion account to do this. You can have all sorts of good stuff in Notion without being paid. The paid account lets you, there's 2 pay options, and one gives you more Notion features, and one lets you use the AI in Notion. I pay for the AI in Notion, but I don't pay for any special features. I'm going to go back. Okay, how to flesh out a synopsis. There's a couple of tricks you can use for that. And I will pop back over here to Sudowrite. What you might want to do is put your brain dump and make sure your brain dump has everything you need in it. Let me go back to a different project where we can play around. Wonder if this is okay. Okay, this is the immersive horror one, but if I come back, let me grab a decent synopsis from someplace. Okay, we'll use Amy's synopsis. And I will, the 2 little documents here is a copy. So I'm going to copy the synopsis here. And then I'm going to go over to the dark side because I have this set up as the different genre. And I'm going to put the synopsis in the brain dump. So what you can do, you can create a brain dump, make a synopsis, put that synopsis back in brain dump. Okay, so we got Amy's in the brain dump, and this was actually the synopsis. We have a style. Okay, what do we want? This started out at life as a contemporary Western romance. Let's see what it does. That might just totally blow its mind if we have romance and immersive horror mystery. Who knows? That's the fun of this. You can just try things and see what's going to happen. Okay, so we'll generate this synopsis. Okay, and we have 346 words. It's not going to be very big because you can only have 800 words in your synopsis. But and I could, if I wanted to, copy this one and put it back in here. I could get rid of all that first if I wanted to. Now, remember, it's still in my history. So if I wanted to go back to that first synopsis, I absolutely could. And then if I want to take the synopsis that it just gave me and rerun it. Yes, this will cost you credit for doing this, but we'll see. It gave us a few more words. So you could look at that. You could add things in the brain dump to make that better. The synopsis looks at only the brain dump. It's not looking at that genre. It's not looking at the style. It only looks at the brain dump. So when you put quite a bit of stuff in the brain dump, it will try to condense it down into your synopsis. So it could be that maybe your brain dump doesn't have a whole lot of meat in it. So you could flesh out the brain dump, and then you could just feed it back and forth with a synopsis. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Or you could run into ChatGPT or Claude and ask it to flesh it out for you. You can certainly do that like we did in the first session. Are there any more questions about the software? Any problems you're having? What's going on?
Nope. Anxious to get back and correct a few things.
Okay.
Thank you for your help.
There's always that. You always have to go back.
Thank you.
And one of my downfalls, and I'm warning you, this is a do what I say, not what I do, is as the LLMs improve, as Sudowrite improves, you keep thinking, and especially with the AI art, as that improves, you want to go back and redo everything. Don't do that. Finish this work, move on to the next one. You can use the new techniques and the new technology in your next book, when I do children's books, so the new art can go in the next book. The new covers can go on the next book. Just get it published. As
Save your words. Save all your words, the old one, the new one, and put it in a file and says next book.
Right.
Yeah, you never know. You'll never know when you need a scene and you're like, oh, I had one. So yeah, I'm with you guys. Keep them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Marigol says you can track your writing journey with that. And I'd be afraid to go back and look at my early books way before AI. So
I was gonna say, is that why you don't want your rights back from your Harlequins, Lynn? Is because you don't want to look at them again?
Mostly, and to think about updating them just from the technology standpoint. We were talking, yesterday? We were talking about no cell phones, no society's changed, no internet, no everything.
Cars have changed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, if I had some of the Western historicals, maybe, and I know that people are writing, what do they call it? 20th century historicals. But
I know. I'm a part of the classics now.
Yeah, exactly. Just exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, Linda, one of the things you can do is you put everything you know about the story in the brain dump. Be careful, though, that you're not putting it, that it's all backstory. I'm a pantser, and when I start, I know a lot of the backstory. If you put that in your brain dump, that will make it your current story, and it will retell the backstory. But anything that you even have an inkling that might happen in your story, go ahead and put it in the brain dump. And remember, anything that you type in the brain dump is not going to cost you. It'll cost you when you read it, but it won't cost you when you're writing it and putting it in there. And that's a real good time. If you didn't see the first class, go back and watch it, because I did a lot of back and forthing with, and I used the three models. I used ChatGPT, I used Claude, and I used Sudowrite. So going back and forth with the LLM and asking it to fix something or flesh it out or what might happen, how can I add conflict? to get a good start for a story. A disassociative writer, okay. So we went through yesterday and we did actually generate prose. We generated the first chapter several times. So if I come back up to my kit bash, I can use my template. And they all have something to do with the sun, which is pretty reasonable, but see if I can do it. I'm going to delete the merge pro. Whoops, maybe I'm not. Oops. Let me get rid of the ipsomorium stuff. And I the way she started here with wipe the sweat from her brow, arrange the last of the panties. And I don't mind. I'm going to leave this in for now. I'm not sure I'm going to leave it permanently. But the early morning sun streaming through the windows is normal, but it promises another scorching day. So it has a job to do in there. It's not just keeping time with the sun. So I'm going to start off with that line. Oops, and I cut it. Didn't get Jessica. But then I like the scent of roses and lilies and the sound of snipping. I don't know if Jessica's actually snipping the stems, but I think I'll do something with the scent of roses. Whoops. Hung in the air. And then over here we have, here she's tying a satin ribbon around a vase. And here we're still talking about the sweltering heat. And that wasn't in the outline, I don't think. It wasn't. I don't know where our sweltering heat came from, but two of them like that. Okay. But I could, if I wanted to really emphasize that, I could put, let's see. And what I might do is I might grab this. I'll leave a line there just so I know what I did come in. Whoops. I didn't cut and paste. Okay. So here we're getting her emotional state, which may or may not work. The fact that we're in an emotional state of a character we don't know yet might be off-putting. So that's something we want to keep an eye on and see if it's going to work or not. In writing, there's no hard and fast rule other than don't take the reader out of the story. Don't upset the reader. Okay. So if I did that, I could do. She stood behind the counter, fingers deftly tying a satin ribbon. And because she had already wiped the sweat, I would say another bead of sweat mixed with her. Okay. Okay, so here we have the small town flower shop on the brink of withering away. See what we have here. We've got Evelyn coming in here. Now to me, this is too generic. Overwhelmed by her responsibility and her inability to find love. First of all, if she's having a struggling flower shop, probably the last thing on her mind is finding love. But here we do have her parents passing, so we might be able to use that. So let's see what we do. Where was This is not deep point of view, where it says she released the sigh that carried the weight of the world, her small flower shop on the brink of withering away. That's telling the reader. That's telling, that's not showing. So we can grab another wedding order from Corsages. Okay. So here it's hinting at the fact that her shop is in trouble because she wants more weddings. Weddings are your high ticket item there. So I will copy that. And I will paste it there. So do you see what I'm doing with the kit bashing? The way I'm taking this, I'm evaluating each bit and mishing them together, taking a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, a little bit of this one. Any questions about that? And I know Marigold says that this is like editing 3 books. I don't think it is. I like all the different choices, and I like picking the best out of both. If AI is your assistant writer, and maybe you have a writing staff, if you're the head writer of, I don't want to say a TV show because we're not doing scripts or something, and you have a team writing for you, you might take the work from one person, the work from another person, and the work from another person, and then put them together because everybody has different writing strengths, just as the LLMs have different writing strengths. And some of them do dialogue better, some of them do description better. That's why I like to do it this way. Now, let's see. Let me check. The Notion template makes it very easy, I think. You can do the same thing with Scrivener. You can do with Word and have separate windows.
Page.
So there's lots of different tools to do it. Notion's free and it's an easy way to do it. And since Melissa set this template up, we don't have to. And she was sweet enough to share it. Oh yeah, everybody's talking about reading their old novels. Yeah, you could. One of the problems is I have some of either the novels I wrote or the novels I plan to write. I've got those stories in my head, and you have to decide whether it's better to go back and redo that story, even if you didn't finish it, or if it's better to move on with a different story. And certainly, as long as I've been in the publishing business, trends have changed. You couldn't do any of the zombie stuff that we were talking about yesterday in the traditional publishing world I came from. Heroes couldn't even drink milk, so you have to things have changed, and especially that's one great thing that indie publishing has done for us. It's let us write the stories we want to write instead of following the strict guidelines. Yeah, Tabby, occasionally. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, Lynn, I love that. You're so right, because not only do you get to now write what you want, but you will have readers who will start following you going, oh, I love this genre, or I love these stories. And that's not, publishers didn't know how to market to such a broad audience. They, like you said, they needed specific stories to market, and they knew the readers. And now it's so broad that I just feel like you can find an author in those stories. But yeah, I just love that. I just love that you had said that it has changed. The world has changed from writing.
Yes, it absolutely has. And even the traditional publishers have loosened up and whatever, but they had a huge audience and they knew their audience and they didn't want to disappoint them. That was the big thing. And it worked for them, I guess, until traditional publishers, what we used to be, the Big 10, the big something, and then it was like 7, then it was 5. Now I think it's really 3. They've all merged and been bought up and everything.
Yeah, but I
But-
love that now there's so many medium and smaller sized publishers too that if you do want to go traditionally published, you can, because there's so many more smaller publishers now too. So I love that too. And so like
you
yeah,
want
that
to
you don't
want to be very careful.
yeah, never pay to publish. Never pay to
That
publish.
never pay to publish, but I have a lot of friends that have gone with the smaller publishers. The publishers have folded. They didn't get paid. The rights to their work is up in the air.
Yeah.
So
They
if
either sold it or
you're
they
publishing, Brandon,
So they either sold it or they then bought out or gobbled up by the bigger ones.
the ones
Yeah.
I'm talking about folded.
Mm.
And so they were in bankruptcy. And the manuscripts they have were considered assets. And it was the writer that really got the bad end of that.
Yeah, and the only way to get that back is going through lawyers and stuff just to try and get it back.
Yeah.
And that
and
might not even be worth all the money.
you're just one of the creditors that
Yep.
is going after the company. Yeah. It's a bad situation. So you want to.
It is.
But
It
Tabby,
is, and
it's
you do have to
wonderful
watch
when you
that.
go back and pick up a book and say, this is better than I thought.
I love when I do that. I'm like,
So,
oh, I'm a good writer. I should have
Yeah.
finished it. And what's funny is I don't even remember writing it. I'm like, oh, I wrote this amazing book.
and sending it in, absolutely possible to take a half-finished draft and put it in. I always recommend that you don't do that for your first project with Sudowrite because you want to learn how to do the software and how it puts things together. And if you're trying to take an idea that you know how it goes and force it into these slots, then that's harder to do. And I'm telling you that because that's what I did. I started with a half-finished novel and I was just arguing with it all the time that no, it didn't happen that way. And it didn't happen that way. And it didn't happen that way. So I took an idea from a genre I really didn't write in. I read, but I didn't write in it. And therefore I didn't care a lot about it and just let it generate the text to see how things worked. And then, of course, by the time I was halfway into it, I really did care about it. And I don't know if I'll ever publish it, but it's done. So working with AI is a whole new skill set to add on top of everything else. Oh, yes. Marigold says a good publisher's worth their weight in gold, and that is absolutely true. So you just want to be careful. And if you feel like you need an agent, you want to be careful with that too, because you get the same sort of things. Anybody can say they're an agent, and then they may help your career, they may kill your career. So just, be careful. It really helps to interview an agent for a friend. You can have somebody interview an agent for you because the typical response is, she likes my work. She wants to represent me. Slow down a little. It's like a job interview where you want to interview them as much as they interview you. You want to make sure you get a good fit. Oh yeah, Cynthia, if you're really specific in your brain dump, it will, for the most part, follow along with that, unless you're going with Best Prose that wants to do its own thing. But if it depends on whether you're a pantser discovery writer or whether you're a plotter. If you're a plotter, you probably would come in with all this information and you could just fill out your boxes. But if you're any sort of even a pseudo discovery writer, you could let it give you some ideas and see if something resonates with you and then pick up from there. Oh, Marigold, that's a bad one. That I hadn't heard of. The Vanity Press, he didn't meet the deadlines of ordering his own book, so they kept the book as collateral. I have a publishing company. I help writers promote. I help people publish if they're having trouble with it. I have a neighbor across the street. He wrote a book. He paid over $40,000 to a vanity publisher to have that book done. And the wonderful thing about indie publishing and Amazon is you can put it up on Amazon without paying a penny. And you don't have to have your inventory. His garage is full of paperbacks and hardbacks that he had to purchase from the vanity press. And I don't know what he's going to do with all of them. He's been giving some away, and he went to some of the book fairs. And you can certainly do that, but I really don't recommend that. And especially if you have somebody, of course, here you have such a wonderful group of people that can help you and guide you. And of course, he didn't. But I tried to tell him, no.
Yeah, that's what
So,
happened to my friend, and I didn't find out till after the fact. And he ended up having to purchase just massive amounts of books. He was here in the US. He's originally from Peru, and I guess the Peruvian publisher picked him up, and the requirements were crazy. He lost total control of his book because they used it as collateral. So they kept the rights to his book, which that's just horrible.
you know, any contract you sign with any publisher, and for that matter, any agent, make sure you know what those rights are.
Were those all these situations you got to talking about, was there no advance involved in these?
Oh,
Or was
not
it-
in advance. You pay them.
Vanity and they pay these. Yeah, that's also.
No,
horrible
it
for
was
us.
a vanity press, 100%. He did not
Yeah.
see any advance. Now I've been with I've been with a couple of publishers where I get an advance. And yeah, the advance is great, but what you have to remember about the advance is that they're
But-
paying you an advance, which means that you don't get anything else until your royalties pay out that advance, unless
Yep.
unless that's something special on top of it as a bonus. So always look, are you getting an advance or are you getting a bonus plus advance? Because until you pay off, until your book sells enough to reach that advance, you're not going to see a penny after.
Even those advances have shrunk over the years.
Oh my gosh, yes.
They have.
Much of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Improved.
For
Yeah, we're gonna
years,
get all those
Harlequin their advance didn't change. And I'm talking about maybe 20 years, the advance didn't change. Then it changed and it went down.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
and the only good thing about if you're trad published, advances can be good because if you're working on strictly royalties, you get paid twice a year. But if you usually they split the advances. So you get an advance when you sign the contract, usually on a proposal of maybe 3 chapters. You get a third of the advance. You get a third of the advance when you turn in your manuscript. And you get a third, the last third you get when the book is published. And that can be 2 or 3 years down the road. So if you're trying to make a living and you really need the money, you want to get new contracts all the time, or get a multi-book contract and then keep submitting so that you get paid something when you finish your manuscript and submit it. So, yeah, paid quarterly with a minimum payout. Plus, you have to submit your taxes quarterly, but if you get paid twice a year, that doesn't exactly jive either. Yeah, with Amazon and most of the indie publishing platforms, they pay out like after 60 days. And if once you get established and you're constantly selling books, you get a check every month. It may not be big, but you get something every month. And while we're on that, I'll tell you, if you're going to use advertising, make sure you stay in the black. It's really easy to go in the red with advertising. You can get a little check from Amazon, and then Amazon takes a big chunk out of your account to pay for your ads. So that's also something to keep in mind.
I never got the hang of Amazon ads or the Facebook ads, so I just use like Free Booksy and Book
Mhm.
Barbarian, Fussy Librarian. I use all of those with mine.
Yeah. I do advertise on Amazon. I've
Do
had good success with there. Facebook, not so much.
But I find that it works better if I have a catalog. Say, if I'm starting a brand new series, I generally do not go out and get like a free Booksy or Fussy Librarian or any of those type of ads until I have at least 3 to 4 in the series so that
Mhm.
it's your read through that keeps things going.
Right. Right. And then, you can always go to unlimited, Kindle Unlimited, but then you don't know how much you're going to get for
That's
the
true.
page
You
reads.
don't. You just get an estimation of how many pages read.
And you don't know how much each month the amount they pay for the page reads is different. You never know. Yeah. If you're into writing for the money, I hate to bust your bubble, but
Rapid
nothing's
release
that
does
great.
okay for me, but it just depends on the genre.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking releasing anywhere from every 2 to 4 weeks, 6 weeks tops, because your tailwind drops off after that.
Yeah.
Then you
Yeah.
lose momentum.
Mm-hmm. And if you have a big backlist, that can help you.
Yeah.
Because you'll get a new reader that picks up maybe one of your current, and then they'll want to read all your backlist. Okay, Tabby, you can be a billionaire. It does happen. It can
does.
happen.
Uh, the author of Highlander, it took her, 20 years or something before her books began to hit? Something like that. Somebody was
They hit pretty right off.
I'm saying
But
here in
she
the
was in a
US.
very unique situation because I was in the writing group with her, and she posted a snippet, and somebody, was it Mike Resnick? I think. Somebody who was established read it and said, "This is good. I'm going to give it to my agent." And he did. And so then the agent, this is Diana Gabaldon that we're talking about, that wrote the Outlander series. And then the agent took it and chopped it and got a quite lucrative contract for it. But they couldn't, it at the time travel didn't exist as a genre. They couldn't decide, is it a romance? Is it science fiction? Is it adventure? Is it a gazillion different things? And she kept saying it's not really a romance, but they had her put romance on the spine because romance sold. And then they had which link do you want, Elizabeth? So then that was when the publishers went out to the book distributors and hand sold books, and they really worked to hand sell that book. The next year, of course, that back then it took 2 years between selling a book and actually having it be published. As soon as they set the publication release date to coincide with the RWA convention in New Orleans in 91.
He's half of that. Yeah, right.
And they put that in every book bag when you registered. So all 2,000 people at that convention got that book. The next year, when the awards came up, that won the Reader's Choice Award because it was the one book that everybody had read. That gave it another boost. They assigned her a publicist, and that publicist worked hard. In fact, the whole group of us were in New Orleans together, and we were all hanging out and everything. And the publicist went with us everywhere, and she took every opportunity to get her on TV, get her on radio, get everywhere, talk to newspaper reporters. And it didn't hurt that another member of this group was a member of Associated Press. So that's how her magic happened. And it's been options for movies all these years. Options come, options expire, options come, options expire. And until, who was it, finally made the,
Stars.
Yeah.
It says released
Yeah.
the television series on
right,
Stars.
made
in
it into a
2014.
series because
Yeah.
there's no way it would be a 2-hour movie. And they looked at it for doing like a mini series. And it really didn't spark people's imagination for that either. They didn't think that would do it. But so doing it the way they are doing it now is the best deal. But you can usually getting an option. Of course, option's not much money. Have you made much money on options, Marigold?
It depends on what's being optioned. I've had some options where it was just an agreement for it to be held, so really nothing passed. And then I've had other options where few $1,000s were passed to hold it. And then once it went to either to development slate, even though it went to development slate, if it does not get the green light to actually be produced, then it can still fall to the wayside. And then once something falls out of option, you can shop it again.
Sure. And my neighbor, the Vanity Press guy, they came back at him and I think he took it. They asked him for $9,000 to shop it to Hollywood.
Wait,
And so
they
I
asked
think he
him?
did pay that. They asked him. Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Remember, he paid $40,000 to get that book published.
Wow, no. Got 10,000 on a couple of different projects over the years, but those never made it off of the development slate. And then they did make it to development. I did write some scripts for it, but then it never got the green light to go. So then I was able to shop again.
And yes, Theodore, your involvement varies. And sometimes you have no involvement and no say. And I've known writers who have actually taken their name off the work. You know how usually based on a novel by or something like that. You cannot use my name with this project at all. And then you have some like Diana, she's a consultant for the Outlander show.
Well, I recommend don't ever take your name off as an original creator because then you always get that credit as the creator.
In the cases I know of, they changed the story so much that the writer did not want to be associated with it. And that happened a lot with romance because especially with after the Bridges of Madison County guy, they like bittersweet and they change it. So the fans that like the story want a romance. They want the happy ending. And they get terribly upset if that's not what happened.
On that deeper POV that you see inside of books where you're living maybe inside of a headscape, that often that doesn't translate in a script. And so if there's a lot of that, then they can't use that. They have to actually use real action. And so all of your action lines have to show an action and your dialogue is what moves the mood
Exactly.
So that is why they are different sometimes.
And if you look at Outlander, they have done a wonderful job of, her books are huge. And she writes in scenes. And there's not really transitions between the scenes. And there is a lot of the head thing, but what they have done a marvelous job at condensing it into a really good show.
Because there was a lot of action in there, because like you said, it was a pretty long book, so they took the action and let the action speak for it, and that's why it may seem like it moves through the book quickly, but it carries the core information, because she is a pretty active writer when you look at the scenes that she's doing.
Oh, her writing is excellent, or she wouldn't be where she is.
You can
So-
visualize what's happening.
But it does take her a
Yeah.
long time to write a book.
And it's hard to do internal dialogue through television and movies too. That's one
Yeah.
thing too, without putting
Yeah.
a narrator over. And I'm not a fan of that. So it's hard to do that. That's why the adaptation for The Host, I love that book, but the movie is terrible
Yeah.
because it's all internal dialogue. It's all internal dialogue. And I was like, how are they going to do this as a movie? And they didn't do it.
And a look here and there just does not convey the same information.
Nope. Yep. Yep.
Writing to the screen is totally different than writing a novel. I didn't mean to go down this rabbit trail. What other questions do you have? What's hanging you up on your own writing? Other than the fact that now you
Migraines?
know you're not going to get rich.
I'm like, migraines?
Yep.
My brain, Marie.
Right.
Work.
Oh, yes. I did that for. You can't open the. Let me. I'll put it in the chat again. See if you can open that one, Julia. And click on the duplicate, and then it will go into your own workspace. And then make sure you duplicate it and rename it so you don't write over the template. So now this is my method, and there is no way that I am telling you that you should use this method. Oh yeah, you're changing the plot. Yes, I understand that. One thing you might do, Em, is to just sit down and have a generation party, especially right before your credits roll over, and just generate the whole thing. And then save the other plot ideas for another book. Now, what you might find, some people do generate the whole book and then go back and edit it. Some people edit as you write. You'll have to find the workflow for you. And I used to be write the whole thing and then edit. But now with the kit bashing, I'm finding it works better if I write a chapter and kit bash it, and write a chapter and kit bash it. That way I can keep things more settled. And yet, I know there was a question earlier about has people done series in Sudowrite? And yes, they have. And
I'm
I
working
think
on a series
Yeah.
right now.
I'm working on several series.
Yeah. I just generated 4 books that were about, 55 to 59,000 words each. 4 of those, yeah. So you can do it, but I'm using a new couple each book on that series and putting a
Mhm.
cameo at the end of each book
Mhm.
to introduce. Aren't you using the same character over book, Lynn, on some of yours? Or are you using new couples?
I'm using new couples.
Okay.
Now I'm using, like this one we're doing, we have sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sisters will show up in each other's books, but each one will be a couple. I have the roommate series, which college roommates get together every year. And so every time they get together, another one will find their love. And so that will be like that. Gonna meet Marie. See you later. I have my shifter series where the shifters are a search and rescue team. So we'll follow the team all along, but in each book, there'll be a different pairing. For me, that works better than taking Diana's method and having the same couple go through their entire life. I get bored
Yeah,
too easy for that.
I did one that was 100 chapters or 100 episodes, and of the same couple, so I'm working through that, but I found that I have a few chapters that are really long. So I
Mhm.
split those up, and because I'm alternating, like if I have the male's POV and have a 5,000 word chapter, I'm splitting it in half and then seeing what kind of beats I can generate for the girl and then slipping hers in between so that I don't have 2 to 3,000 word chapters and then all of a sudden a 5 to 6,000 word ones so that I can break it up. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Mhm. Now, you do a lot of serialized work too. Why don't you
I
talk about
do. I do, and because this one is actually serialized, and I wanna keep my chapters closer in word count. If I'm writing an ebook, I don't care how long my chapters are as long as I get the story out that needs to be told. But on a serialized platform, if they're having to pay for unlocking that episode and you go all of a sudden from 3,000 word episodes to maybe 1,500 or 1,200, your readers are going to feel the difference. And then some of them might complain about that. So I try and keep my word count closer when I'm doing a serialized body, only because they're having to unlock it by paying credits.
Oh my gosh, that is such good advice. I was wondering how to get around that because I was like, I get so upset when an author gives me a really good chapter and then they give me like a paragraph for the second one and I've paid for that episode. And I'm like, you did not just
Yeah.
give me a paragraph. I did not just pay for
Well, and
that. Is
another
such
thing,
a good idea.
I try not to repeat, and that's one of the things with AI you have to be really careful of. Like with Tapas doesn't want you to use AI assisted content anymore. But say Radish and eGlobal, they're okay with you using AI assisted work. And so just make sure that you don't have a lot of information repeating or that your episodes that you're writing for them are actually moving the story forward. There's nothing worse, and you will get people complaining if you have an episode that really has nothing in it. It's just there to meet the word requirement. So be careful with that.
very good advice. And Virgo has been teaching classes for eGlobal lately. And how are you arranging the question and answer thing with eGlobal?
I put together a list and I sent it. I took the list that we have in AIWC and I sent that off. But if any of the people in your sessions have questions that they would like to have answered, then definitely have them send those to you, or you can have them send them to your Book in a Month club, and we can submit those to Gayleen if you like. Gayleen would be more than happy to answer any of those if you send her an email. And if you need her email, I can send that off to you.
Okay. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about what eGlobal is.
So eGlobal Publishing, they're an actual publisher. So whenever you sign with them, you basically give them rights. If your contract is 3 years or 6 years, they have the rights to your work during that time frame. And they do contract not only for your serialized platform, but they also sign for like your media rights. And it's only for the duration of the contract. Once your contract is up, you can either have that conversation to renew or you can go your separate ways and all rights revert back to you 100%. I've never had an issue with eGlobal. They are quick to pay. I get a check from them every quarter, and they do submit to about 10 different platforms for serialized bodies. And that saves me from having to submit to each one of those individually because there are some of the serialized platforms that you would not want to submit to personally because you'd need an aggregator to help you, like StreetLib, if you're going to do it as self publishing, because you want to protect your rights. I would recommend if you're looking at, say, Dreamy or Dream, that you use StreetLib or you go through somebody like eGlobal to make sure that you're protecting your rights as an author. but they will help you upload stuff. I have a portal that I can go into. I can see how much I'm making every month. I can see when I'm going to pay out. I can request a payout. I can also go to the websites where my books are listed, and I can set up an author profile, and I can communicate with the different readers that are there, which I don't do a whole lot of because that's a huge time suck when you have multiple pen names.
So that's something to think about when you're setting up your pen names, is whether you want to use a pen name and how many you want to do.
Yeah, I have
And
multiple, but like you, Lynn, if you're writing sweet romance and then in one genre, but then you go in and write in another genre, say historical or contemporary, you might want to have a different pen name. So it just depends. I can't have my young adult that's clean with my adult steamy, so that's why I have
right,
different pen names.
yeah, that's a very legitimate reason. And I use a different pen name for my paranormals than I do for my contemporaries.
Yeah.
And I use yet another one for my children's book.
Yep.
But I'm not building that name up as far as the children's books go. I don't have a website, I don't have a Facebook page. It's just
Well,
there.
and I don't think it's as relevant anymore, but I know that women, especially when they were writing in horror, they would hide their names they'd change it to R.T. Smith for horror because people weren't taking women writing horror seriously. And if you wanted to go through traditional publishing, you almost had to do it that way because they wouldn't
Right.
take you on as a female writer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's so as prevalent anymore, but that's another reason for
Yeah.
pen names too.
And science fiction and mystery was the same thing. And on the
Yes.
other
Yes.
hand, there
Men
were
writing
several
romance.
males who wrote Harlequin. And of course
Mhm.
you couldn't use a male name on a Harlequin book.
Yep. Yep.
I know a couple of males who write science fiction, alien romance, and they use a female name for
Mhm,
their
mhm.
pen name. And as a reader, I'm a voracious reader and I read just about anything and everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, talking to readers, there are certain things that, and I completely understand why females may use a different name for thrillers, males may use a different name for romance because it's the nature of the beast of publishing.
Yeah. And you can use a gender neutral name.
Yeah.
However, if you want to build your persona, and especially if you want to go to conventions, yeah, that's going to out you pretty quick.
Yeah, I should give you guys a fair warning. My first pen name was Autumn, and I'll never forget going to my first convention and people calling my name and me not realizing that they were talking to me, and that's not my name because I'm Tabitha. So they'd be calling me. So I learned real quick, use the pen name that you know you'll respond to
Right.
when readers call me.
Sometimes you might want a sound alike name or something. And sometimes you might end up using that name everywhere. I don't think anybody calls Nora Roberts Ellie anymore except her family, because she's Eleanor. She's been Nora for so long, and has such a following with that. Yeah, racial and cultural can get you in trouble too. So you want to think about that. And I don't know, you probably don't follow RWA very much, but they had an ethnic blow up a few years ago. And I don't know if they're going to recover. In fact, I'm not sure they're going to have a convention this year because it's been such a mess. Because one of their board members is Asian, and somebody wrote an Asian book that really was a problem. Another board member, I think. And they're until recently, maybe not now, even now, they're not a very diverse group. And so that really had repercussions. So that's something else to think about. Especially if you're Amy Tan, of course you're writing the ethnic, but if you're not and you want to write ethnic, then you better know what you're dealing with. You better know how you're talking, what you're talking about, and you better be very familiar with the culture. Yeah. How did we get off on this? The publishing business, I guess.
Sounds like a minefield.
It is.
I'll never publish. I'll just read the book myself. That's all I'll do.
There you go. What's wrong with John
That's
Troy? I like John Troy.
I know. I'll publish under that name. I've got a few books out there already. So
Oh, good.
it's but no, I'm not on the latest ones. They're going out under a different name completely.
Is that one of your characters, your profile picture?
Yes, it is my grandfather.
Ah.
And he does look like that. He did look like. He doesn't look like that now. He did look like that at one time. I was saying earlier, he was on the Titanic.
Oh, really?
He survived, yeah, because we're only about 2 hours from the last place that the Titanic left, where Ireland, where his farm is. It was Cobb, or back then it was called Queenstown, I think. So, Queenstown or Queensland? I can't remember. Queenstown, it must be. Yeah, it's Queenstown when he sailed from there. That was the last port as it left for America. All the Irish jumped on there, all his third-grade citizens and passengers. But
Are you going to write that story?
It's in the book. It's in the book already. Yeah. So yeah, he's the main hero in it. It's a science fantasy novel, but he's the hero in it because he lived through quite a lot of things: First, Second World War, all the Irish troubles, and the Titanic, of course, and a few extra things. He was a bit of a character, but yeah.
Right.
And he just as well he managed to get off because I wouldn't be here otherwise.
There you go. There are. Well, what for all of you? What is stopping you with your book? Where are you running into trouble? How can I help?
Now we've got 9 tools to use for prose. It's a nightmare. It was bad enough with 4, and now kitbash 9. But there you go.
Yeah, you can get overwhelmed.
You can, yeah. It's a bit of a just as I was getting used to it. It's suddenly now become the story Bible and more tools to learn and more things to learn. But yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, I think.
With the AI, we're out here on the bleeding edge, and things are going to change, and you're going to need to be flexible. And
oh yeah. I worked in IT for 45 years, so I'm used to
okay,
things just changing at the drop of a hat. So yeah, it's
right.
This is so much faster. I think AI is moving at a very fair pace at the moment. I think
That's why it's so important to learn your method and learn. You don't have to know all the tools. Now, because I've come from a training, teaching background, I feel I need to know them all so I can teach them all and help everybody with them. But don't do that. Don't make it hard on yourself. Find out what works for you. And then just, as Manon said, stay on track and finish the story.
Yeah.
Because it will not make you any money sitting on your hard drive.
Yeah. And that first draft.
Make a good T-shirt. That would. It won't. You should have that on a T-shirt. It won't make you money. It's on your hard drive.
Right.
And that first draft is not going to be perfect. So don't try and make it perfect when you're generating. Yes, your beats need to be solid, but even if you're writing it pre-AI world, you still have to do a lot of editing, and writing it is the easy part. It's the edits with the revisions, having to make sure that everything connects, that there aren't any gaps. And I'm not joking when I say I read my content over and over. By the time I'm done, I want to kill all of my characters because I've read it so many times.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I had an editor tell me one time that the first draft is like making love and the editing is like raising children.
Right.
I think Stephen King said it best. He said that the first draft is just pure poo.
Yeah. And I think Anne, can't think what her name is, wrote Bird by Bird. She called it that first draft.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to be. And I think AI is a big help with that. Because I know that I used to have to go through, my first draft was dialogue and had no description, no nothing. And so then I had to go through and make a whole pass on putting in description. Then I had to make a whole pass on putting in sensory detail. Then I had to make a whole pass on putting in emotion. And the AI helps with that. It really does. And so it does help write faster. And that's why I quit writing for Harlequin. They wanted 4 books a year, and I couldn't do it, especially not working full time in IT. So, so I think once you learn it, it will speed up your process. I'm 99% sure of that.
Yeah.
Unless you decide to do, 12 versions of every chapter, and then that I'm not sure about. Oh, Anne
I don't know
Lamont,
how
thank
y'all
you
do
very
that.
much. So the whole process is finding your method, finding your way.
Yeah.
What else? Anybody got anything else?
I would take it
No.
one chapter at a time, one page at a time, and just plow through.
Yeah. I was using a project per chapter for a period of time with Story
Mhm.
Engine, and I've moved it now to an act per project, but not a book. And then
Yeah, it
books
depends on how big your books are, how
Yeah,
many
that's the problem.
projects you need to break them down into.
Yeah, so I'm debating now. Even when the books I'm writing at the moment, it was going to be 3 volumes, but each volume is in 4 parts. So I might turn those parts into books rather than the volumes into books. So I'm debating that at the moment, so we'll see.
And
My favorite. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lynn. Oh,
No,
yeah.
go
I
ahead.
was just going to say one of my favorite advice that I ever got was just do 15 minutes a day. If you have time, if you get in a workflow and you have more time, keep going. But your
Yeah.
book deserves 15 minutes a day. You can give up 15 minutes of your day to just work on something, editing, adding in character development, working on an outline. Just 15 minutes. That's all you have to put it. I even used to do a timer. And as soon as that timer went off, I'd be like, I did my 15 minutes. I've been productive. And it does. You'll realize how suddenly your brain will start going into a flow and go, you know what? I can do maybe half an hour today, or maybe I'll give it an hour today. You will find more and more time as you do it.
Yeah. I think the
But
hardest
yeah,
part,
just think
at least for
15.
me, is to sit down and get started. Once
Yes.
you open the file, you're there and
Right.
you can get into a flow. But it's just, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that.
It's the logging in on your computer part.
And lately it's been getting off of Discord.
I should check my email then.
Yeah. But that may be where some of us might benefit from doing the serialized work, is you can start publishing it before you're finished, but then you're under a deadline to get the next section out and get the next section out, and you will work
Yep.
in small chunks.
Because you're being held accountable for it. I think that's
Right,
why I like
right.
that idea too. Is accountability has always been one of my. It's been one of my things that if I know someone's waiting for me to do it, like one of my best books I think I ever wrote, and the fastest one I ever got written was when I co-authored, because there was someone else that had expectations of me getting it done. Like when you have that deadlines and accountability.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things that we tried to build into Book in a Month. And I know most of you are in Book in a Month, but is the accountability factor. The every week, what did you accomplish? How many chapters did you do? What did you do? And yeah, the deadlines. If it weren't for deadlines, I'd never get anything done. That does work. And it works better if they're not self-imposed. So
Yeah, you need some level of discipline, don't you? Otherwise, you either do too much or not enough. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Then
And
you
back in the day when I had a critique group, we would meet every week. And so we needed to bring a chapter a week.
okay.
And that worked pretty well. You wanted to polish it up pretty much because you didn't want to get embarrassed. But then when everybody critiqued it, then part of the next week would be editing that chapter to put the changes that you agreed with in, and then generating the next chapter.
Yeah.
So that works for some people, and that's the method behind booking a month. Hopefully you do the chapter a week or however much works for you.
Yeah, I don't like to have that hanging over my
Likewise.
head. I know
And-
some people are okay with doing that. They will go in and every week, like on a Monday or something, they'll write multiple episodes and then they'll pre-schedule for the week or they'll write an episode a day and release. Life gets in the way for me so often that I prefer whatever I write in Q1 for the 3 months and edit, I can then send off. And then that's what gets uploaded in Q2 for scheduled. And during Q2, I'm writing Q3. So that way I know that I'm constantly, I have at least 3 months that I'm working on that content that goes into the next quarter.
If there aren't any more questions, I will shut off the recording and then we can talk and say things that we might not want to be on the recording. Does anybody have any questions they would like on the recording?